There's a quote that is attributed to Abraham Lincoln: give me 8 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 6 sharpening the axe. Now, depending on where you're looking at it, sometimes it's 8 hours, sometimes it's 6 hours. That's really irrelevant. The message is the same. The most important part of the job is preparation. That's the topic that I'm going to be speaking about today. Welcome to episode 10 of Unlock Speaking Confidence. Anytime that I'm working with clients, they will see that quote because it is absolutely fundamental. When the preparation work is done well in advance, prepared properly, that will automatically help the speaker to be more confident. They're going to be confident that they will be able to communicate their message clearly, that they will be able to do so concisely within the time allocated, and they're going to be confident on their content. So how do you prepare? I'm going to give you a brief overview of preparation steps that I suggest to my clients in this video here today. And the first thing that we need to take a look at is the audience. Now, we can go into long audience analysis, but for today, we're just taking a look very briefly, thinking, who is going to be listening to what I have to say? Because the audience will determine everything else. It will determine the type of language that you use, the examples that you're going to use, the level of detail that is required. If it is a general audience, then it's going to be just at a very high level. You're not going to go into lots of detail. If it's a technical subject and a technical audience, then you have free rein to talk all the jargon that you want because you're speaking to people who speak your language. So who are they? Who's the audience? What do they know? What do they need to know? How are you going to bridge that gap? The second piece that you need to take a look at is, what is your message? Frequently, clients will say something to me like, I'm just going to talk to them about. I'll just tell them about. Think about it from the other point of view, from the person who's listening to what you have to say. What message are you going to have that they can take away from them? Is it going to be just a general outline of the topic that you're speaking about, or are they going to have a core message taken away? So, for example, at the end of my presentation today, the audience is going to know 3 reasons why they should do whatever the topic is. So think about your message in advance. Then you are taking a look at what is the structure that you're going to use. How have you a structured approach to deliver the message that you've identified to the audience that are going to be sitting there? So, for example, maybe you are using a chronological order. You're talking about your business, for example, and it is talking about how the business was established, where you are now, and what your plans are for the future. That same order, that timeline order, could be flipped around. Maybe your starting point is going to be our plans for the future, and then you're moving it backtracking to talk about, well, let's talk about first of all what our beginnings were and where we are today, and then finishing off again with the plans for the future. It might be that you have 3 main points and you are going to do 1, 2, 3 as to what your main points are. There are a number of different structures that you can use, and we see the number 3 is very frequently used because 3 is the smallest number that makes a pattern. Our brains like patterns. So if you start off telling the audience that you've got 3 main points that you're going to share with them today, they can relax because they know where this is going. You can relax because you know what you're going to speak about, in which order. You've got your structure there. So whatever format you're choosing to use, make sure that you have a very clear structure. The next point that I would suggest you take a look at is, how are you going to back up the different points that you're making with evidence. And that's where you're bringing in stories. And if you want more information on stories and storytelling, have a look at the last couple of videos that I'm after putting up here, and you'll get some ideas on those. But think about what stories, what evidence are you going to be able to bring in to back up the point that you're making. And finally, what is your call to action? What do you want the audience to do at the end of it? To know, to think, to feel? Is there something that you want them to check out your website, to sign a petition, to agree to the proposal that you're putting forward? Is there something that they need to do? And if there is, then make sure that you are very clear on that before you start doing any planning on the actual wording of what you're going to put in a presentation, and most definitely before you go near slides. So 5 core elements that you need to get started with for planning your putting a presentation together. First of all, who's the audience? Secondly, what is the message that you want them to get from your speech? Thirdly, what structure are you going to use? Fourthly, what stories or what evidence do you have to back up the points that you're making? And finally, what is your call to action, and how are you going to communicate that clearly to the audience in the presentation that you're doing? So 5 steps to your preparation. Next week, I'm going to move on and take a look and see for your practice, different elements that you need to practice so that you are well prepared going in to that presentation when you're going to deliver it. So do join me then. I'm Maureen from Soft Skills Success, and this is Unlock Speaking Confidence.